Joseli to the front. Joseli, in front of Julia. Joseli.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Well, if I was Julia, and there's only really one Julia that we can think of, frankly, and this Julia is Julia Gillard, our Prime Minister, the first female Prime Minister of Australia, a new Australian like me, like many Australians who were born overseas, yet we're proud to be Australian. And she's the first ex-Gen Prime Minister for Australia. She was born in the 60s. However, what a state of situation she's put herself into. She has the lowest popularity of any Prime Minister. She's perceived by the populace, by you possibly, certainly by others, insofar as not to be trusted, apart from the fact that she's a woman. And of course she's created a legacy which started a little under 2 years ago. And that legacy is etched in most Australians' minds, and certainly people who are living here, the 23rd of June 2010. Hard to believe it's less than 2 years ago, because I for one do feel that a lot's happened in the last 2 years. It's been very intense, yet it's been just under 2 years that she's been Prime Minister. And why? Why is it that she is in this predicament? Well, if I was Julia, first and foremost, I would not have done the fatal failure that she did when addressing the audience, addressing the populace, addressing the media, standing there with the deputy. I would have insisted that the leaders of the factions would have stood behind me. I would have insisted that it's a decision of the party, that it's a decision of the system that we live in. I would have made it clear to the Australians who vote and those who've forgotten the fact of our system is that we apply the Westminster system. So the Westminster system, for those who don't know, is that the people don't elect the Prime Minister. The people elect the members of Parliament. The Parliament, majority of members, usually from a party, then elect the leader, who is appointed as Prime Minister. If I was Julia, I would have made it clear to the people, firstly, if you don't like it, let's go to a referendum. I'm for the Republic. I believe that you should elect the Prime Minister. So, let's do it. She should have seized the moment. She should have made it clear that she was simply following process and she was a consequence of the system that's in place. Let's not forget the Westminster system, which started in the UK, is certainly littered with similar scenarios. All of us will remember essentially a similar scenario with Tony Blair. Certainly most of us, and certainly the women here, would remember the similar scenario with Margaret Thatcher. And let's go back home in Australia. Let's be realistic about some statistics. We've had 32 prime ministerial terms in our system, in Australia, in our Commonwealth. And there have been 21 prime ministerial changes without election. I bet everybody here is surprised as to that quantity. And certainly within the last 20 years, which all of us have been around, none of us can claim to be teenagers here, we've certainly had a number of them led, and let's remember, Hawke was deposed, certainly Whitlam, certainly Menzies and Gordon for those in the 60s range who were in their teens back then. And of all our Australian Prime Ministers, five were actually voted out through a party-run coup. So poor Kevin Rudd, his ego was dented. Get real, a woman being. Now, certainly, had she made that clear and communicated to the Australians, I firmly believe the scenario wouldn't be the way it is. Scenario 2, if I was Julia, election 2010. She was brave to take it to the people rather than fulfill the term of the elected government, which was Labor, by majority. And she took it to the people. And in fact, she took the brave, some would say, hero position of not moving into the lodge until she was an elected Prime Minister. That should be commended. Yet, consistent with any pre-election, she made a policy: there will be no carbon tax under the government I lead. And that was a fact. She made a statement, an unequivocal statement, of the Australian Labor Party policy as we were going to the election there. But we all remember the fact. There were the three little wise men called Oakes, Wilkie and Windsor, who were elected as independents. There was one elected for the first time, Green, to the lower house, and on top of that, the numbers didn't stack up. Why couldn't Julia, and if I was Julia, have said, you the people have decided you don't want Labor to lead in majority, so therefore we are a minority government. Therefore, what we've said, what we've promised, clearly you didn't like. Therefore, I have had to negotiate to have the status as leader of a minority government that relies on at least 3 members of Parliament that are not members of the Labor Party. Therefore, all policy is up for renegotiation. And guess what? That man for the opposition party, Tony Abbott, would have undertaken a similar revisit of all his policies had he had the chance, but he was just like outdone by a woman. And so, Julia Gillard became Prime Minister. But if I was Julia, certainly I would have approached it that way. I firmly believe that certainly in the process of qualifying and being effective in the communication, in spite of being a lawyer, she should have eaten a bit of humble pie and just reaffirmed some solid facts. So, when we think about it, and when we think about the reality of life, women are criticized just for being women. How many of us actually saw the quantity of variations of suits that the previous Prime Minister wore? Needless to say that the fact that his eyebrows were growing so high would have challenged any man's beard, which I'm talking about Howard, of course. But isn't it a truth of life that women, amongst women, are probably more analytical? Oh, she wore this last week. And men and the media certainly observe women leaders more so than they observe male leaders, what they wear, the hairstyle. Sure, Julia can do it, as you can see from various photos here. She can look humanistic, she can look less like a Queen Elizabeth I being a porcelain doll, which sadly appears to be the general perception. But sadly, had she maintained that women's weekly look, I think a lot of people said, well, that's not very Prime Ministerial. So let me finish it off by simply saying that if I was Julia, I do believe the scenario would be different, but alas, I am not.
What a speed if I was a junior. I found the speaker's tone of voice, pitch was very authoritative. The topic, the fear of politics, kind of glued on it. It's very heavy. But the speaker also included some humor on her presentation. I think it's the point of view she has done very well. To me, one element was missing. And I think it applies to all of you in here. Because when we heard you have to do the presentation, and immediately you might think, I have to make a PowerPoint slide. Have you ever thought about that? This project is actually project number 5. We haven't had a chance to announce the objective of the project in this for the speaker. And it's your body speaks, and the purpose is to express the body, to let them express gesture. basically. So I found holding this stuff, maybe preventing her speeches to be more dynamic, having a projector, also reflecting some kind of, what you call, I found it that obstacle. So I would say the topic is very heavy, and project objective also mentioned let the audience imagine about the topic. So it is in other words, it's an art of words. Use the words and use this heavy topic, let them people to imagine. Other than that, I would say the topic was well digested, the people understand. As a matter of fact, people laughed, so people got the speaker's message. I felt in that regard, the speech was well done and well thought, well prepared. Even the speaker downloaded research, so to speak, appropriate pictures to get her message at the best of the at the moment. So in that regards, well done, and then talk to you, Toastmasters.